Warning. This program contains strong language, auditory violence, and mental nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions. With your host, Berzerker, this is Unshackled Fury.
Rock season is in full effect. World of Warcraft patch 9.2.5 is suddenly upon us. But today I've got something on tap that's just a little bit different. So welcome back to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions, Unshackled Fury. I'm your host, Berzerker. This is episode 109. And on today's show, we have an interview. And no, it's not one of my usual interviews of, let's say, a dubious origins. But instead, this is a real, live human being. He is the co-host of the immensely popular podcast, The Xbox 2. He's a senior editor at gaming news and review website Windows Central. And like me, a lover of chonky squirrels everywhere. The one and only Jez Corden. Welcome to Unshackled Fury, Jez. How the heck are you?
Hey man, thanks for having me. You know, rocking and rolling. Same old. It's awesome to be here. It's an interesting time for World of Warcraft. So, you know, I've been sort of reaching out to people in the Warcraft community to sort of get a sense of where everyone's head's at with the, you know, the future of WoW and all that stuff. So, yeah, I'd really appreciate you taking the time to bring me on and talk to me.
Absolutely. It's kind of like it's a strange experience for me because typically people don't give me a lot of interview space, which is part of the reason why I kind of have to make up some of my own. So it's nice to talk to somebody who has, I think, a bit more ground level connection with what's going on out there in the community, in the gaming sphere, because it's very big. And one of the things that I think is interesting to see here is, you know, how on one side we have the Blizzard space, there's the Blizzard Activision space, there's the Xbox space. It's like we all kind of have our own little spheres, and over time they're starting to coalesce as these larger companies are buying out all these other studios, and we're all kind of getting folded into the same family. But I'll get into that in a little bit, because I think that people who listen to this show are probably wondering, like, okay, all right, here's a well-known figure, but from a different sort of sphere of influence, right? From Xbox, Microsoft community, like what is that? Where does that nexus play in? It should be obvious if you've been following the news, but we'll get into a little bit of that later. I think more importantly up front, I think people want to get to know a little bit more about you, because in doing kind of like looking into more about yourself and your background and all those things, you have some really great stories to tell about kind of how you've gotten to where you are. But I want to start with, and I may have noticed this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you have a little bit of an accent. It was a little hard for me to tell, but maybe you can tell me, whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up in Britain, right in the middle of, in the West Midlands. So not a lot of people hear West Midlands accent, because not many people escape this county. So it's probably the most famous Midlander is Ozzy Osbourne. So
there we go.
It's that accent.
That accent, much beloved in this household. So we appreciate that. And you grew up as the oldest of all of your siblings, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Big family, small family?
It's a pretty small, fragmented family nowadays, I think. But yeah, it's man. That took me aside a bit. Yeah, Family's weird for me.
Family is very weird, no doubt about it. And where I wanted to kind of ask you about that is being the oldest. You know, a lot of times you hear people talking about how their sort of entry point into gaming is either like an older sibling or a parent or, you know, sort of like a mentor. You know, the Obi-Wan that's leading you in. You know, very timely. Obi-Wan leading you in to sort of that space. Did you have somebody at like a younger age that brought you in, that folded you into that, or were you just the renegade going, this is my jam, I'm all about this?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I had to think about it for a second while you were telling me, like, how did I actually get into gaming? And it was actually my mum's brother, my uncle. He bought an Atari 2600 round to my house one time, you know, with the horrible joysticks and the wood.
Oh yeah,
the wood finish. you know, just rocking out on those games that were just little stick bats and stuff. I mean, this was like 1990, so there was already like much better devices out there. But even though like there was like the Master System, I think was out, and the NES and stuff, Atari 2600 was still my first console somehow. But from that, I ended up with a Sega Master System. I can't remember how, if my parents bought it for a birthday or Christmas or something like that. I should probably ask them, like, because I honestly don't remember. But I remember playing like Sonic, Alex Kidd in Miracle World, and you know, all those sort of classic games. And I didn't even know Nintendo existed until I was much older. It was weird because there were just not many kids around me at school who had consoles and stuff like that until like much later. And then, like, you know, siblings were born and they'd get like Nintendo consoles and I'd get Sega consoles and stuff like every couple of years. And we'd always somehow, whether it's via second hand or something, or hand me down from a neighbor or something like that, we'd always somehow end up with like every console eventually. But
now the Sega Master System, that was something that, did that come out in the U.S. or would that have a different name? Because I know there were some naming conventions that were changed between the U.S. and here. Like the Genesis, I think, was a different system.
Yeah, the Genesis, it was called the Mega Drive in
Mega Drive
in the UK. It was Sega Mark III. I'm seeing here Sega Master System. It says it was called the Sega Master System in North America. But it was not the most popular console in the world, I think. So that preceded the Sega Genesis.
Okay, because that was the first one that I knew of. Because I was the Nintendo kid, and so it was, and I think because you're about a half a generation behind me, maybe in terms of age, but I think you could agree there were two camps. There were Sega kids, there were Nintendo kids. I mean, there was brand loyalty at a very early age. And it's funny that you mentioned the Atari, because that was also my gateway drug, getting through from my stepfather, who had a system. And yeah, you're right. You know, playing Pitfall and Tank, you know, and even just basic old Pong. You know, I mean, nowadays it's so basic and so trimmed down from anything. But at the time, it was the most amazing thing you'd ever seen. And then you get in and like, oh, this is another system, and now it's 8-bit and it's 16-bit. Oh my God, it's twice as much as we had before. I mean, it's just to think of how, you know, and we'll talk about some other games later, but you know, to think about how far we've come, like in our lifetime, right? It's amazing to me, and I try to tell my son all the time. I'm like, you don't even know, like you don't even understand where we came from. The older gamers, you know, even like middle of the road gamers. Where we've been. But you also have said in the past, and I missed this opportunity myself if we ever had it, but you were at one point paid to stay in school, right?
Yes.
So
wow, you've done your research, man. Man, this is hilarious. So specifically, like for the 3 years that this policy was in place, I managed to land in the exact right age in the right place to actually get this money. So like well, God, not the previous government, like several governments ago, they had this thing for like kids from deprived areas, you know, and because the truancy stats were so high, they'd be like, please stay in school. We'll give you like $40 a week if you stay in school.
Wow.
So was it a month? I think it was a month. Or was it a week? I'm not sure. It must have been a month. It must have been. A week, maybe too much, but even at $40 a month, like that was more money than I'd ever seen as a kid. And the idea was that you spend on, you know, school books and stationery and stuff like that. But yeah, there's nobody I know spending on that stuff. It got spent on all kinds of ridiculous stuff. I remember kids going and buying like remote control cars and just driving them around in town and just leaving them there, and people going and buying like huge wedding cakes and just bringing it in and just be like, hey guys, chow down, we got a wedding cake here. But I saved up my money and bought like my first Xbox and a bunch of, you know, I bought games and stuff like that, and paid for Final Fantasy 11 MMO subscription and stuff like that. My first MMO was Final Fantasy 11, and it was a weird time. But like right after I left school at 18, failed. They took that policy away because I guess they realized kids don't know what to do with money at that age. And, that was funny.
Yeah, especially if it's designed to go for, you know, practical things, like you said, books, school supplies, those sorts of... No child in any era at any age is ever going to spend any of that money on something so practical. But credit to you for thinking about saving money, because that is also something that most kids don't really think about. My son gets $5 in his hand, and it burns a hole in his pocket. Like he cannot wait to go out and do something with it. So that is an immense amount of willpower. Credit to you. But so that then gets you into Xbox, into that world, into that kind of that first dip into that world, or were your friends into Xbox? Was that also you're just kind of going out solo on that, or was that like the main line in for you?
Well, we always had this sort of thing in my household where, like, even if we were buying them secondhand or something, it was just like a thing. We always had to have every console eventually, almost like hoarding, you know. So we had a Dreamcast, a GameCube, every model of PlayStation 2, and some of them were broken, you know, but we just had to have them even if they were broken, you know. So somehow I acquired this Xbox just because we had to have every console. I don't know why we did that, thinking about it now, but that was just a thing, you know. Even like we didn't even have any games for some of them. I mean, we had like two games for the N64.
Just look good.
Yeah, I don't know. They're all lying somewhere in a cupboard now. I think it's just like in case there's a game that we have to play. We had to have every console. Like we had like two games for the N64, and like the ones we played the most on was PlayStation back then. PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, I guess. But some of the other consoles, they just sat there gathering dust. And frankly, my Xbox sat there gathering dust as well. I only had like Halo, and that's it. I think I had Halo and Halo 2, and that's it. Because like back then there was no internet. So like, and I know now how many games I actually missed out on that I have subsequently played later. Stuff like Knights of the Old Republic, Giant Empire, and Morrowind, and like the original Xbox actually had some really great games that I just missed because there was no way to discover that stuff. There was no social media. My friends weren't huge gamers. People I knew weren't huge gamers. Like I'd learn about games from the front covers of magazines, like when you're in a shop and it's like splashed on the front page. It's like, oh, I need to check that game out. Or stealing the demo discs from the front of magazines and running away, you know, without buying them. Because we weren't a rich family by any means. You know, it's like most people around where I live, where I grew up. It was just sort of a case of like, you know, get what you can get your hands on. Really, I probably single-handedly put Blockbuster Video out of business. But But
You and me both.
yeah. But,
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was an interesting way that kids back then got into gaming because there was no internet. How do you discover this stuff?
Well, and that's what it was. I mean, it's funny you bring up magazines because my Bible for the many years was Nintendo Power, right? Like that was the jam. That was, you had the rankings, right, of what all the hot games were, and they had whatever the top 50 ranking or whatever it was in every issue, and you're like, oh man, who has this? We'd go over to Buddy's house and figure out whatever games we were gonna play. But then when Mario 3 came out and Mario 3 was the top game for like 5 years, we were like, well, there's never gonna be a better game, so we're gonna stop doing this. And then I think eventually Nintendo Power just folded somewhere. But you're right, that was how we found stuff out, or Playground Rumor, right? Somebody would tell somebody about something, and you're like, oh, I heard about this game, we can do this thing. And like for me, that's about the time when PC gaming started coming in, and you'd hear things about games off and on, the Doom discs that would float around schools, stuff like that, right? But you're right, there were no message boards, there's no social media, there's no anything, and so that it was all very much word of mouth. And yes, whatever you could get your hands on, however you could get your hands on it, even if by surreptitious means, we'll say, but that, that's how it works. So you get out of school, and I know for me, I look at you're writing for your senior editor for a pretty big website, and you're cranking stuff out, you're doing your jam there. To me, when I think of being a professional in that world, getting a paycheck from that world, like the first question I always have is, did you go to school? Did you get a journalism degree? Was there some kind of road that led you down that path? But for you, it doesn't sound like that was the road, that it started more with personal work, a blog that you wrote, some other things. Talk to me a little bit about how did you end up, let's say, going down the Windows Central route? Because I also have a question about chalking up expensive booze on the company dime, but we'll get there.
Man, it's a wild story, really. I mean, the pathway, like, my school was rough. It was a rough school I went to. It was, when I was like, the way British school works is, you sort of, high school starts at 11 in Britain, and all the kids age 11 to 18 are all in the same school.
Ooh.
So that can be pretty rough for 11-year-old, mixed in with oftentimes violent 18-year-olds. And, so often a lot of kids did anything they could to not be in school. Not be in my school anyway. Yeah. So, I wasn't great at school. And I remember this specific moment when in year 9, I don't know if you guys call it 9th grade, but how old are you in year 9? 13, 14?
9th grade is like 13.
Yeah. So we call it year 9. So in year 9, generally they start to sort of pivot you from education to start thinking a bit more about work. And you have there's this, at least when I was a kid, they did this career week where they bring in some job search specialists, and they do a quiz with you and be like, what kind of job do you want to get? And I told my job advisor I wanted to be a paleontologist. I wanted to dig up dinosaurs. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool, right? Dinosaurs are cool.
Cool. Every kid wants to be a paleontologist.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to be a paleontologist because I had a video game that was and I've tried to track this down, but it was a video game, a paleontology video game on Windows 95, where you had to brush the dirt off dinosaur bones and dig up fossils and stuff like that. And I just can't find it for the life of me. I've tried really hard, but I can't find it. But that was why I wanted to be one, and also because of Jurassic Park, I guess. Yeah. A lot of kids. And my job advisor was like, "You can be an office worker, Have you thought about working in admin and being an office clerk?" And I was just
exciting.
Yeah, I was just done. That moment, I was just done with school. So I just stopped trying from age 14 to 18. I just stopped trying and just spent every waking hour I could trying to learn other things. And I'm really lucky because my parents they saved up and they bought us a family PC. And I live on a main road, like near a freeway, and we were like one of the first roads in all of the UK to get like broadband internet, because it's a main road, I guess. I remember them digging up all the road and laying down all the cable, and we were really lucky in that end, that scope. So we had a PC and we had broadband internet, and instead of like doing all the schoolwork stuff, I was like trying to learn HTML, and I wanted to make websites, and I was really into newgrounds.com, if you remember that website.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I used to make cartoons, and I wanted to build a website. I wanted to make content, and entertain and stuff like that. And but there was nothing like that at school to teach you how to do that. And so even like from a young age, I used to make websites and dabble in PHP and HTML and like the early versions of CSS and stuff like that. And but like when you get out of school, it's like now you've got to get a job and stuff. So I was unemployed for a long time. I came out of school with no qualifications. I didn't want to go to university because it's like £9,000 a term in England.
That's tough.
It's a lot of money. And I was thinking like I don't want to end up with that kind of debt over me. So I was thinking like I'll make my own way. But instead of making my own way, I just played World of Warcraft.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. I was 17 when it came out. I remember like I had like geography exams, and my raid leader was like, "Oh man, but we really need you for Nefarian today." and I was like, "Oh man, I got this geography exam," and he was like, "Yeah, but okay, fine." I was just like, screw it. I only get one chance to kill Nefarian. I could do geography exams some other time.
Yes.
So I skipped my exams to kill Nefarian, and I have no regrets because it was like killing Nefarian, like we were server 3rd or something, but it was just such an epic moment. All these people screaming on Ventrilo and stuff, and I got way more out of that than getting a piece of paper with a geography grade on it. I hope there's no kids listening to this thinking like, "Oh, I can play games too and skip my exam." But no,
it's all right. There's no kids listening to this. I'm sure.
But to put those kids off, there was a decade of misery that followed.
There you go.
I was like, so I had no qualifications. I had no prospects. I couldn't get a job. I didn't get a job until my first job I got. I was like 22, I think, and it was because, this was also like at the credit crunch. The first once in a lifetime recession, which would probably head into the second once in a lifetime recession. So it was the credit crunch. Unemployment was really high in Britain, and especially in my area. So it was rough, man. And then my job centre was so fed up with me not being able to find a job, like the welfare office or whatever. They were just like, you're gonna go and work at this place, being a junior IT technician because you can type fast. So clearly how to be an IT technician. I didn't have a clue, but I knew how to use Google. So like I'm there like Googling how to do Windows Server because that's what I'd always done. Learning. I didn't like when I learned how to make cartoons for Newground and stuff. It wasn't like I went to university to do animation. You just Google it and muddle through. So I muddled through in this job. And then, I was really good at it. And I sort of, it made me more motivated. And it got me out of that mindset of, like, I'm never going to have a good job or, And it sort of gave me a foundation. And then, but there are times at work as an IT guy where there's nothing to do. Everything's working fine. And I'd just be sitting in my office waiting for the phone to ring. So I just started blogging, while I was waiting for the phone to ring. Writing blog posts and stuff. And at the time, there was this guy I knew who was like this massive Apple fanboy. I'd never known...
Yes.
Yeah. I'd never known anyone that was a fanboy of a tech company. And it was just really weird, I thought, and kind of irritating. So, like, to be a dick... because he was always telling me, like, I didn't even have a smartphone at this point. I just had a dumb Nokia phone. And he was like, it was like, oh, you should get an iPhone. They're amazing. And this is like the iPhone 2 or 3 at the time. This is like a long time ago. And it was like, you should get an iPhone. And I was like, just to be a dick, I got a Windows phone. The least iPhone phone you could imagine. And I wanted to relearn how to do HTML, and because 10 years later, making websites is all completely different than it was when I was a kid. And so I was like, I'm gonna design my own content management system and make a blog and blog and stuff and code and relearn all that stuff from modern era. And I started blogging about Windows Phone, of all things. And not even gaming at the time. It was just Windows Phone. And like Windows Phone also has Xbox achievements. So like there was some overlap between the gaming audience and the Windows Phone audience to some degree amongst achievement hunters. And then I noticed my blog posts were getting traction on Reddit a lot. And I was like, oh wow, this is actually kind of fun, social media. And so I'd fallen into this IT job, forced to go there, and I started blogging for fun. And then one day I got an email from Daniel Rubino, who runs Windows Central, and he was like, we like your stuff, we want to give you a job. So I landed into that job as well. So I've basically just sort of fallen through life like like calamity, getting lucky left, right and center, I guess. And it's absolutely crazy where it's all ended up.
That's fantastic. I mean, you can't discount all the work that you put in between, though. I mean, an unconventional road it may be, but there's still work that's being done in there to get you to a point where, because I have to believe that if you didn't have at least the ability to put a couple of coherent sentences together, nobody would be giving you a call, and Reddit would be just hammering you, because I don't know Reddit to be the denizen of nice thoughts for the most part. No. So yeah, it's
I was writing like, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, yeah, I mean, I was writing like 10 articles a day at that point, because I was like,
wow,
I wanted to steal traffic from other websites, because that's how we used to do it back in the Newground days. We had our own website, and we were like, yeah, we're going to take on Newgrounds, and we're going to be bigger than Newgrounds. It's like that ridiculous North Star, see how far you can go, right? Obviously, we couldn't take on Newgrounds because Newgrounds was damn massive, but we tried, damn it, we tried. And I applied that mindset of like, a ridiculous goal and just see how far you can get with it. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take over Windows Central. I'm gonna be bigger than Windows Central, but instead of risking.
Now you are Windows Central.
Yeah, exactly. That was my thought process. I'm going to be bigger than all these websites, and now my thought process is I'm going to be bigger than IGN. I take over.
There
IGN.
You go. That's that. Hey, listen, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I think that's attributed to Michael Jordan. That may or may not have been his quote, but I mean, you have to shoot your shot, and you gotta go big, because it's the dream exceeding the reach, that kind of a thing. Like, you always have to have like a little bit further out there, or else, I think you lose motivation. If you have something that's like bigger and greater and grander, that keeps you going. But somewhere in there, and I want to hear this story, because I think this is a pro tip for everybody, is you got sent out at one point on a trip, and I believe this was on somebody's dime, Nokia's dime, Microsoft's dime, somebody's dime. And you ended up at a bar somewhere, and you pulled an all-time pro move that I think anybody should do if they have a line to the company credit card account. So could you fill my listeners in on how this went down?
Well, it comes with the mentality again of like just going for it, right? So Microsoft was struggling to make Windows Phone a thing, as we now know from the fact that it's dead now. So they were struggling. They were trying hard, and they were spending a lot of money on anyone who would write about this stuff. Literally, like, this is like YouTube's early days and stuff like that, and they were trying to get any influencers to talk about this stuff. So, you know, they must have seen my posts on Reddit and stuff, because, you know, I didn't have huge amounts of traffic. I'm talking like, you know, Windows Central is up at millions and millions per month, and I was up at like thousands a month, if that, some months, you know.
Still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice, but it was like, I was just like, man, why me, you know? So, but then I quickly realized that there was just no one else I was talking about Windows Phone. But it's nice, because Microsoft's got a lot of money, so they were pouring tons of money into Nokia, like mountains and mountains of cash into Nokia. And Nokia was spending it non-stop on marketing agencies and stuff. And this like Nokia marketing consultancy in London was they dropped me an email one day and they're like, hey, do you want to come to Barcelona to check out the launch of the Lumia 640, which is like like 8 years ago now, 10 years, something like that. And I was like, sure, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I've never been to Spain before or anything like that. I was just like, this is it. I'm peaking now. This is like the furthest this is gonna go. So I'm gonna make the most of it, you know.
Yes.
And they fly me out there, and a bunch of other like bloggers and photojournalists and Trisha Hirschberger on YouTube, who's pretty big now. And I think she was easily the biggest person there. And she's got a YouTube channel now and stuff, doing tech and all kinds of stuff. And she was easily the biggest of the group. But there's a bunch of like influencers there of all shapes and sizes, and I was just there completely out of my depth, thinking like, I'm just gonna get absolutely hammered and make the most of this. So
yes.
They put us up in this expensive hotel in Barcelona, and the guy, one of the guys, whips out a credit card with Microsoft's logo on it. I was like, wow, that's like interesting. And it's like we set up a bar tab, you know. And it says to the barkeeper, because, you know, Microsoft's rich. I was like, give me your most expensive whiskey. And it was like, he goes onto the top shelf with this dusty looking potion, you know, from like the 1800s or something. And it's like, oh, this is $70 a shot. And I was like, yeah, let's have some of that. So
yeah.
It just tasted like any whiskey to me. But you know, I'm not a connoisseur of whiskey. I just wanted to get smashed, and so I'm drinking this $70 a measure whiskey and having a great time. And then it was that event that Daniel Rubino offered me a job, because like we had this group interview with Nokia's marketing vice president, and then after the interview they were like, okay, we're gonna go to the beach now and hang out or whatever, and because it's Barcelona, you know, it's a holiday resort. But I was like, I could go to the beach, or I could go and write up this interview before anyone else and get all the traffic from Reddit. So instead of going to the beach, I went to my hotel room and wrote up this interview before anyone else could get the traffic, and then slapped that thing on Reddit. And then got all the upvotes, and there's like, you know, there was some unique information in there. And Windows Central had to cover it, because it was like, my information is my exclusive, you know.
Yeah.
And literally that afternoon, like about an hour after I posted it, Daniel Rubino phoned me up and emailed me and offered me a job. I was like, God damn, that's the most amazing trip ever. And then the rest is, as they say, history.
That's gotta feel amazing for a kid that, you know, grew up in an area where people don't escape, to be able to go down on somebody else's dime, go to Barcelona of all places. I mean, we're not talking about just, I mean, that's just not some hole in the wall middle of nowhere. I mean, that is one of the all-time global destinations, and to be on one of the largest corporations' dime on the planet, and
it's crazy,
and have also the foresight to be the first one to get this information out. And see, I think this is what comes across to me, is that you have this mind for, you know, again, shooting that big shot, right? That space that's out there that you're trying to reach and that you're trying to dominate, you know, even if it's, you know, being like a pirate in a way and just sort of overtaking stuff and being the first one out there. I mean, it sounds anyway that like that has been a tremendous asset for you. And Now you are at the point where you're the person that people are coming to. You're breaking news. You've got the dirt, and you've got exclusives, and on a regular basis, it feels like you're the person that people are coming to. And how I mean, first of all, how does that feel to be somebody who sits in a nexus like that, where unnamed sources are coming to you and giving you some pretty legitimate shit about something like that? That's got. I mean, I would feel amazing with that. Like, oh my God, people. Well, first of all, trust me with that kind of information. But second of all, again, it's feeding into that. I am the source. Eat shit, IGN. I'm the group. I'm the one that people want to come to. How does that feel? But then also, like, how does that evolve for you into coming into Windows Central and now being like the guy?
Man, it's still wild. Like, it's still such a wild ride, and I'm just sort of, like the whiskey. I just keep every day. I think, like, just make the most of it, because things end eventually. But I'm just trying to make the most of it. And honestly, the community around Xbox is just a big part of it, because they're so passionate about Xbox, and getting this platform to grow. And this is why Microsoft's buying Activision Blizzard. It's for Xbox fans, really, and addressing the feedback that Xbox has no games, and that trying to fight against that narrative, and the market's consolidating, and Microsoft, they don't need gaming. They're a cloud company, They could go full IBM and go full corporate. They don't need gaming. But they do it because the people there, they love it. The people at Xbox love it, the staff love it, the fans love it. And when you ask me, like, what's it like sitting in that nexus, it's such a privilege to be around such passionate fans, but also like such smart devs and smart engineers, and the people at Xbox, they love it. It's beyond it's beyond a job for them. And that's kind of like how I think of it. And I think oftentimes that's why I beat a lot of people to information, because it's more than a job. It's like a lifestyle almost, for me. I don't clock off. Yeah, I live it. I don't clock off, really. I like every waking moment. I'm looking for stuff, because that's just how my brain works. I fixate on things, That's why I've been playing WoW. I've been playing WoW since launch. I get fixated. I'm fixated on Warcraft, and I'm fixated on this role that I've carved out for myself, and it's just that, the way my brain works, I guess. But it's amazing and humbling, and I wanna deliver for customers ultimately. And it's not about being a fanboy of Xbox. It's about holding them to account, making sure they do the right thing, making sure they deliver value for money, and and when the deal closes for Activision, that's going to extend to Blizzard. They've had like a ton of scandal the last few years, and I see a big part of my role is to hold the big, powerful, rich companies to account. So I never
somebody
want to lose
has
sight
to.
of that. Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate what you have to say about sort of the fixation on things. I too share this similar affliction. My wife calls it the bomb. There's like two parts of me. There's like normal me, and then there's the bomb, and that's when I'm watching YouTube videos about a thing at midnight, because like I have to learn about this thing, and I have to figure this out and focus on it, and like get all this stuff to. Most of the time, it has to do with barbecue. I mean, it's not like this is some real deep shit. It's surface level stuff, but I can appreciate that. And
man, I want to try your barbecue now.
Listen, I don't have the Microsoft dollar, but if I could fly you out for some brisket that I'm cooking up in a couple of weeks, I would absolutely do it. Because
man, I love brisket.
I can't eat 15 pounds of Wagyu brisket by myself. So, yeah, it's my birthday. It's my birthday treat for myself, and that's what I do. But we can have whatever you want.
Of it.
I will. I always do. You know, I wonder that too, because sometimes I post more stuff about barbecue than I do about WoW or gaming or anything else. And I'm like, I wonder if people have just muted me by now, because they're like, all he posts are pictures of ribs and brisket. There's nothing about WoW news on here. I'm like, that's just what I do. I don't know. But I will absolutely be loading some stuff up, and I'll tag you just so you can see that when I post that. So last thing, a little bit about Xbox is that, as I mentioned, you are one of the co-hosts of the Xbox 2 podcast, which is, big. When just a little peel back of the curtain here a little bit, I am the type of narcissist where I do kind of keep track of rankings. And every once in a while, I see what this podcast, Unshackled Fury, does, and it goes up and down. And it's like right now, I'm very big in Luxembourg, and I'm very happy to have that as part of my rankings. But Xbox 2, if you just go out and look at rankings, you will see how big the listenership is for this program. So I'm not just like blowing smoke here. Like this is a legitimate thing. But you have now had this for a handful of years. I think you had another podcast before this one, but you've had this now going for a while, and your listenership is rather large. And you also have very long. Like you guys go. Like here, it's an hour and a half maybe. Like you guys go. What has that experience been like for you, growing that particular platform, and how do you see sort of the things that you talk about on there maybe a little bit differently than Windows Central? Is there a bifurcation between the two? Is there a lot of bleed over? How does the management of the podcast versus the website work for you?
Well, they're separate, and it's funny because I actually offered Windows Central. I was like, I do this podcast. Like, do you guys want it? And like when we were small, and they were like, no. And I was like, okay, fine then. We grew it separately, and now it's like a second source of income for me. So I'm glad. Thanks Windows Central for not taking on my podcast, because I wouldn't have been making.
Now you're getting that
money
manscaping money.
Yeah, Manscaped, Codex too. But yeah, it's been crazy, and like we never really. It's funny because usually when I have a project, I'm thinking like I want to take on IGN, I want to take on this, I want to do that, and these are my goals. But with this, it was never really something we intended to be big. Like me and Rand, YouTuber Randall Thor 19, we used to get on Skype because we'd share information. Because even though Rand says he always says he's not an insider, he is. He gets information all the time, and he doesn't want that. He doesn't want that brand, because I don't know why. In case he's like wrong or something, he knows stuff. He pretends that he doesn't. And we used to get on Skype like and talk about, like, compare notes basically, and we talk for ages and debate back and forth, and we were just like, man, this could be a podcast, you know. And we'd have a laugh about it, and we just decided to basically broadcast our Skype conversation. And that's why they're so long. It's because there's just unstructured Skype conversations, really.
Yeah.
And it really took off, and you know, the community around it has been amazing, and we get so much support from everyone, and Xbox staff tune in, and Xbox executives tune in, and
wow,
you know, news outlets tune in and take things out of context for clickbait headlines. You know, so.
No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, as long as they give a link back, it's okay. But you know, it's been crazy. It's been a wild ride, you know, and I really really enjoyed the podcasting scene, and you know, the Warcraft radio followed me on Twitter, and then now I'm exploring the Warcraft podcasting scene, and she's how I discovered yourself and your very, very fine show that you have here.
Oh, thank you. You know, credit goes to friend of the show on Warcraft radio here, Queen of Murlocs, who's one of our fine folks over there, who actually made the hookup here. So credit where credit is due. I want to give her a shout out for that. And it is funny to see just the different universes and how it's almost like, you know, multiverse kind of situation where you have the WoW podcasting scene and it's its whole own bubble over here. And then you have other franchises, other sorts of groups that have their own podcast scene over here. And there's some things that are very similar. There's some things that are very different. And so I think one of the things that I was looking forward to in talking to you is just it's the blending of the universes coming together. And it's kind of a natural thing, I think, at this point, because we are, at some point here, going to be part of the same family.
Yeah. Dude, you have no idea how crazy it is. Like, the first time I was at E3, it was like, I don't know the year, maybe 2014. It's hilarious because I was very small. You know, Windows Central has grown a lot over the years. It was not a small website, but we were known for Windows Phone. We were called Windows Phone Central back in the day. And Windows Phone died, so we had to pivot very quickly to something else.
Yes.
And we were just like, well, let's just cover the whole Windows ecosystem, you know. So that's what we did. We pivoted away from Windows Phone because it was dead, and we moved to cover, you know, Windows and Xbox and stuff. And you know, our bosses were like, they're tech bloggers and tech journalists, and they're just like, you've got to prove that this gaming thing works, because like we don't know anything about this stuff, you know. So, and they're like investing in me and flying me out to LA and stuff for E3, and you know, and I'm like desperate to prove that this stuff can actually work and get traffic, and that we can compete with the big boys out there, and we can be a gaming site that is mostly a tech site, because game journalism is very different to tech journalism, and we sort of exist in this weird niche that sort of bridges tech and game journalism in a weird way. But I digress. It's hilarious because at the first E3, and we're all like, Rand was there, and you know, loads of other smaller YouTubers are there, and I think some of the Iron Lords podcast guys are there. They're another Xbox podcast that's growing pretty big now, and Mike Ibarra, who now runs Blizzard.
Yes.
He was a vice president at Xbox at the time, and like he's there, like, you know, supporting all the smaller guys that were there, and we're trying to make it. And he's like, you know, and you know, there'd be parts of the stage where it's like, oh, you can't come here, VIP pass only, and then Mike Ibarra would be like, nah, ignore that, and he'd like be taking us backstage, and Mike Ibarra would be like bending the rules for all the smaller guys and smaller YouTubers and smaller bloggers. So, and like, and you know, and I went to Vancouver as well and interviewed Rod Ferguson when he was running Gears of War, and now he runs Diablo. And, you know, I met Josh Kerwin, who, you know, he used to do marketing for Gears, and now he's marketing for Diablo. So it's weird that, like, all these people who I used to work with are sort of, now that they went away to Blizzard, and now they're coming back to Microsoft again. So it's like, you know, it is a weird conjunction of worlds, you know. And but it's exciting, I think, because we get rid of Kotick.
Well, that's a shared sentiment across the board, I think, and you know, that getting to the kind of one of the things I said earlier is that in looking at why would I bring somebody outside of our usual ecosphere onto this show, this is exactly why, because I think you have such a great global perspective of where we've been, where we are, and what is about to happen, because this is not a small thing by any means. I mean, just dollars and cents wise, you know, we're talking, what is it, $70+ billion or whatever the thing. I mean, it's some humongous
72.
deal, but 72. So that alone, you know, the financial analysts, they can do whatever they want with that. I think for us more locally, it's a culture thing. And that, to me, I think is the biggest shift that those of us that have followed and been on the Blizzard side for such a long time, that is the seismic shift that we are looking to have happen, because there was a time when, and now it is tainted to a great degree because of all the things that we know, but there was a time when Blizzard was really this standout organization. They made the coolest games. They had a great culture. Everybody seemed to love working there. You know, I remember working at the time at an insurance job, and this is, you know, 13, 14, 15 years ago, working at an insurance job. And I'd be sitting in a cubicle all day, taking angry phone calls from old ladies who'd backed into each other in parking lots. I mean, just mind-numbing stuff. And then you would see these folks that work at Blizzard, and they have their own Starbucks and a gym, and everybody seems to be having a good time. And you're like, God damn, that is the best place I've ever seen. Like, this is amazing. And then the years go on, and things start to come out, and we find out there's all of this harassment and discrimination and all of these just heinous things that have gone on the even worse individuals in charge, whether it's Kotick or members of the board, and they've covered things up, or they've, mitigated damages in certain ways, and that once peerless culture has been damaged to a great degree, and we've seen, especially in our community closer here with podcasts, I would say, I don't know the numbers exactly, but maybe half of the podcasts that we've had have died. People that have walked away and said, I can't be a part of this anymore. This doesn't feel good. I can't be part of this. I got to walk away. And so coming into then hearing, oh, Microsoft wants to buy them? Oh, that sounds great. I mean, we would almost take anybody at this point. It'd be like, oh, who wants to buy them? Fine, let's go. Like it wouldn't matter. But and this is where I think your expertise is vital to this conversation. Is my impression coming in is that nobody's clean, right? Nobody's had a completely sterling existence as a company. There have been incidences of all kinds of things, and I think that's where we talk about holding people accountable, right? Like when the big guys fuck up, somebody's got to be there to say, hey, psst, we saw that. But our impression, I think, across the board in terms of the sort of the Blizzard fan base, the people that cover these things, is that this is a good thing. That the culture that will be brought in by new leadership from Microsoft is going to be positive. It's going to have a positive effect. But for somebody like yourself who's connected at a very root level, what are your impressions culturally of what kind of impact this could or will have on the franchises that we know and love on the Blizzard side?
Well, I mean, Xbox has sort of had this they've been through this cycle too, where it's like, not necessarily the harassment side, but some of the cutting corners side and funding problems and stuff like that. Like, you can sort of, if you look, as WoW players, you can sort of look back through the expansions, and you can see a definite dip in quality across the board when you compare like Shadowlands to say Legion, in terms of how much, the content density and just investment that went into the games, And if you followed Activision over the years, they kind of put some of their franchises in this sort of managed decline. They did it with Skylanders, they did it with Guitar Hero, where it's like they completely saturate the market until everyone's sick of it, and then they just manage it enough where they can still siphon some cash off the dwindling fan base until it dies, And my fear after the last few expansion was, oh god, they're Guitar Heroing Warcraft,
Oh no.
That was literally like went through my mind. But the best thing about this is that Microsoft's gonna want to make their money back, and they're not gonna put all of that on Call of Duty. They bought the whole of Activision Blizzard, not just Call of Duty. They want the whole thing. And Phil Spencer, who runs the CEO of Microsoft Gaming now, not Xbox. They've rebranded and reorganized a little bit. He's someone who actually plays games, unlike Kotick. He's someone who actually loves games, unlike Kotick. And he's someone who invests in developers, and he's made games, and he knows the culture of making games, unlike Kotick, who's basically a glorified accountant. And frankly, Phil Spencer's also, weathered Xbox through a storm of similar issues, where Xbox used to be part of the Windows division, and they were underfunded. And especially 2013 with the launch of the Xbox One, is horribly positioned, horribly messaged. And then since 2013, they had a content drought because it was being underfunded, and funding had been allocated for TV shows and all kinds of weird stuff. And that's before Phil Spencer's time. And Phil basically inherited a mess and cleaned it up, built up, new initiatives, bought new studios, and basically provided Microsoft leadership, with a business plan for delivering a platform that would work for everyone, provide a platform for devs and creativity, build a great platform for play and leisure for consumers, and also, make Microsoft a ton of money. And Phil Spencer seems to have settled on this winning strategy of it's a win for everyone and shareholders. And speaking of shareholders, that's even bigger than Kotick, getting rid of Kotick, is getting rid of Activision Blizzard's shareholder culture. Because everything right now is about appeasing Activision Blizzard shareholders who, they don't really care about whether a game is good. All they care about is money. Which is why they have this like ebb and flow of like poor quality games where they've cut corners and they've cut corners to improve their margins one year, and then they'll be like, oh well, we'll try harder next year. Or like one quarter they'll fire 800 people to make their financials look better one year, and then they'll hire them back the next quarter because we actually do need some support staff, and it's this sort of turmoil that Activision Blizzard has, that being part of Microsoft will shield Activision from a gaming perspective, because Microsoft shareholders, they don't give a crap what gaming is doing. They don't care about the gaming division. All they care about is cloud and the business-to-business stuff. They care about the $2 billion military contract for HoloLens. They don't care about Call of Duty. So Microsoft shareholders have a completely different mindset and a completely different culture. And Xbox is basically like a well-funded indie studio within the bigger Microsoft ecosystem. Because like I said earlier, Microsoft doesn't need gaming. They don't need it. Yeah. For them, it's like, it's something they do because they love it. It's like the Surface stuff. And Microsoft makes Surface laptops. They don't need to make laptops. They could make better margins, just licensing it out to Dell and HP and stuff, which is what they do already. They make Surface stuff because they've got a load of money and they attract a lot of talented people who are just like, let us make some insane devices that shouldn't exist. Like the Surface Studio and a folding Surface Duo. Like, these devices shouldn't exist, but they do it anyway. And because there is such Microsoft's sort of a strange company, because they exist in this sort of charmed life. They're like 40 years old, 50 years old, and they've been the biggest company on the world and then shrunk and then become the biggest company again. And it's like, where do you go when you're the biggest company in the world, So Microsoft sort of, under Satya Nadella, the CEO, they're hell-bent, and sure, they love making money, and they do have a duty to their shareholders to make money, sure. But all that comes from cloud. It all comes from Azure. It all comes from business to business. And what Phil Spencer did very cleverly was, he was like, when he brought their business plan to the executive leadership team, he provided them a plan to make gaming sort of valuable from a business to business perspective. And that is like selling cloud servers to Ubisoft to run Rainbow Six Siege, for example. And it's things like Azure Game Stack. It's things like Simply Gone and Havoc Physics Engine, which they can license out to developers, which is really where Microsoft sees its business mission, is making money on developers and letting other companies have the tools to make and grow their businesses. So, but in order to have a sort of, I don't know, an authority in this gaming space, they sort of see it as their mission to also have a big gaming presence, and naturally they see Tencent as their biggest, scariest competitor in that space.
Yes. And for people who don't know, who is Tencent?
Tencent is Blizzard's nemesis. Tencent owns franchises like League of Legends and Riot. They make a bunch of mobile games that are really famous that I can't think of off the top of my head. They run Clash of Clans. Is that Tencent or is that a different company? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But they're huge. Tencent's the biggest game company on earth by a mile, and it's because of games like League of Legends. They're free-to-play behemoths on mobile and microtransactions all over the place. And Tencent's been stealing Blizzard artists and developers left, right, and center for some of their franchises and their studios. Valorant and stuff like that. And because of how awfully Bobby Kotick has been running that company. So it sort of presented Microsoft with a golden opportunity, and they were looking at Tencent and the rise of Tencent and being like, damn, we're really far behind in our own studios here. And Kotick's running Activision Blizzard into the ground with his absolutely terrible decision making. Because Activision shareholders, they don't care about competing with Tencent. They just want to make a quick buck, and they just want more microtransactions. Like, they can't understand why they can't just turn all Blizzard games into a free-to-play mobile game, pay-to-win and stuff like that. That's what they're constantly pushing for, and that sort of noise filters down from the executive level through to the developers, and it shapes the games in a bad way for us. And we've seen it in Blizzard's monthly active users. They've gone down and down and down. They've lost like half their monthly active users since 2013, and that's purely through a misunderstanding of what people want and expect out of Blizzard. Activision totally just thought we can just milk Blizzard like a cow and make a quick buck on it, and they made a lot of money, but it's at the cost of long-term thinking and long-term planning. They're killing Blizzard. Right. Activision is killing Blizzard, and I wrote an article about this like years and years and years ago, and everything I said in that article ended up coming true. But now we've got like this light at the end of the tunnel, where as like fans of no matter what franchise you're a fan of, StarCraft, Warcraft and Overwatch and stuff like that, things like Overwatch 2, nobody thinks Overwatch 2 needs to exist. It only exists because Kotick wanted something that they could put at retail, because that's the mentality they live in. Anyone with a brain cell would know that they should have just kept updating Overwatch. You're never going to see a Fortnite 2 because Tencent gets it, and Epic Games gets it. Tencent owns like half of Epic Games as well, so Tencent own half of Fortnite, but they get it. There's never going to be a Fortnite 2 because why would there be? But Kotick doesn't get it.
There doesn't need to be.
Yeah, exactly. His mentality is we need something we can stick a number on and put in a retail on store shelves, and as a result, they're gonna create an Overwatch player base with a stagnant content slate, and I don't know. But anyway, we get into a point now where there's light at the end of the tunnel, because we'll get Activision away from that shareholder culture who think more in short terms rather than long terms. Like Microsoft for Xbox, Microsoft thinks more long term. They didn't buy Activision Blizzard thinking we'll make all this money back in a couple of years. They're thinking like 10 years. They're thinking like 15 years. They're thinking like, what does the future of Warcraft look like? It's no mistake that Phil Spencer name-checked StarCraft, and he said things like, we want to take Warcraft to more players than ever. You don't say those things unless that's your plan for the acquisition. The fact that they've spent $72 billion in cash, no other company on earth can do that except for maybe Apple. That's
a staggering amount of money.
It's a monstrous amount of money. Like, you can't even imagine how much money that is. That's like multiple Olympic-sized swimming pools full of $100 bills kind of money.
That's right.
It's and they're dropping all that not for the fun of it. They're doing it because they've got a plan to grow these franchises, and B, because they love it. It's no, like when I think about all the people from Microsoft who now work at Blizzard, like Mikey Barra and like Rod Ferguson and Josh Kerwin and stuff like that. I know these people. I know them personally. I've met them, and I remember Mike telling me years ago, like, the only company he'd leave Microsoft for is Blizzard, because it's not money. It's because these people like us, they grew up playing these games a lot of the time. They love Diablo and they love Warcraft. Mike's always on Warcraft. He's always on it.
He is.
If you got him on Xbox, if you add him to Xbox Live, you can see what games he's playing, and he's like, because of the Xbox Game Bar for PC, he's always on Warcraft. He's always on it, and he streams it, because he loves it, and that's the kind of people that you need in place running these companies, because people like Kotick, they're just numbers guys, man. They don't get the culture. They don't get why people, are pissed off when they announce a phone game without the core game. Do you guys even have phones? That was the Kotick mindset. Yeah, I feel bad for him, but it's like there would have been someone being like, oh, mobile gaming's huge, you know, it's bigger than anything, and it is, but it's a different sort of mentality, you know, and it's man, there's just so many facets to this, but I am more confident than ever that we're gonna be in a good place with these franchises, you know, and future's bright.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because certainly we're looking for any oasis in the desert right now. But one of the things that I know I've talked about on here at length, and certainly other people have in other places, and it's right on the point that you're making, is one of the things that we loved about Blizzard originally. It was a frustration, but it was an understood frustration. Is they'll put things out when it's ready. That was always our expectation. Is that, do I have to wait forever for this next game? Yes, I do. But you know what? When I get it, it's gonna be smooth. It's gonna be fun. I'm gonna enjoy it for years, and I am willing to look past that. And it feels like, to your point, that they've gotten away from that. The priorities have shifted, and we've lost a lot in sort of the road from there to here. And to hear what you have to say about sort of that change in culture in terms of perspective, like what Microsoft's perspective of this portion of their portfolio versus the Activision Blizzard, you know, it's the whole versus it's a part. That's a great perspective shift, and something I think a lot of us are hoping to see come to fruition, because you also name-checked probably my second favorite franchise, which I love, and I stay up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning watching tournaments over in Korea, is StarCraft. I miss that franchise so fucking much, and I cannot believe that it has been this long since we've seen really anything for them. And I love that the competition scene is still out there and they're doing their thing. You know, watching Tasteless and Artosis still calling games and, you know, keeping me entertained at all hours of the night. Like, I have come to appreciate that in a way that I couldn't expect. But yes, having StarCraft of all franchises being name-checked, that's a big one for me. And I really miss that franchise, probably more than I can adequately say. But, you know, for you, it's coming back. Do you think so? I mean, is that purposeful name checking?
Don't know when, don't know how.
I love that.
But they ain't done with it. Like, even without Microsoft, I know that they're exploring what to do with StarCraft.
It's such a rich universe, and there's so much more to tap into there, and then there's different ways to slice that one. I genuinely hope so. And I know when I look at, you know, my bookcases back here where I have, you know, collector's editions of different things, like I think about what happened with Diablo, and, you know, with Diablo 3 and how that got chopped up and different things happened to that. And now maybe with Diablo 4, we're taking our time again, and we're making that like the right kind of game for the people who want to play it. And it seems like there are bits and pieces of this cultural shift trying to, you know, it's like a giant ship, right? You can't turn it all at once. It takes time, it takes effort. You got to be patient, right? But you start to see like these little shifts that start to occur, and you're hoping like the whole thing is going to come with it. And it almost feels like the Microsoft acquisition is like a jet engine or a tugboat or something that's being jammed into the side. And like, all right, let's fucking go. Let's go. Come on, we got to move. Because there is such a rich history, and there's these universes and franchises, and people want to be in them and play them and spend time in them. And you're giving us a lot of reasons not to right now. And being a WoW player, like specific to this show, has been really hard the last, I don't know how many years, because of just the state of the game, the state of the community, the company itself just completely going in the toilet. Like, it has been rough. But for you, I want to touch on your Warcraft experience, because you do have a great number of articles out there. People can read all kinds of thoughts that you have about Warcraft, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. I think a lot of us feel like Dragonflight really has a chance again to be part of that ship turn and doing some things. But your personal history, you talked about how you played it when it came out. You're missing geography exams because you're getting in on some Nefarian kills. But just in your time and place, what do you like to play? What's been some of your favorite parts of WoW leading up maybe to the current age?
Man, World of Warcraft's been such a huge part of my life. Like, I have tens of thousands of hours played in WoW, like by far more than any other game. Spent thousands of dollars on services and race changes and server transfers and all that stuff. Like, when you add up like over the years, easily spent more on WoW than any other game, and spent more time in WoW than any other game. I got friends that I met in WoW like at launch that I still speak to, and I credit WoW with sort of shaping my passion for gaming communities as well, which helped me out in my job and stuff. Because the WoW community was always so passionately analytical of the state of the game, and
yes.
being like on forums and stuff, and people like analyzing the game's development and stuff. You learn things about game development as a kid, like just reading some of these like really long, well thought out posts from like completely anonymous people who could probably make a career in writing if they had mind to do so. And like sometimes the quality you see on like Reddit posts, like thousands and thousands of words, and I'm just like, you wrote this for free. You can make some money with this. But I digress. It's been a crazy journey. Like, I played like almost every expansion, but like I did take a massive sabbatical from WoW when did I drop off? I dropped off during Thrones of Fronda in Mists of Pandaria, because my guild my guild and my group of friends that I've been with for the longest time just fell apart. It happens, right?
That happens.
What boss did we get up to? We got up to I can't remember the name of the boss, but it was like a big robot with blood in it, and he split into little robots with blood, and
it was like an Animus thing.
Yeah, Animus thing. I can't remember, but we got stuck on this boss, like in heroic.
That one sucked. That one was hard.
Yeah, and it killed our guild. It killed the whole guild. Ooh. And the whole guild scattered to the four winds, and I was just like, I'm done now. I'm gonna stop playing. And God, what year was that? I don't even know. It's funny. It was
probably around 14.
Yeah,
14,
something like 15? That. Like, my brain operates on two different timelines. There's like the WoW timeline, there's the real world timeline. It's just
yes.
I can place like
that's right.
I can place life events in my life against World of Warcraft expansions if I just like look up what year it was. But
that's right.
But yeah, and then I didn't play. It was Warlords next, wasn't it? I didn't play Warlords at all. Yeah. And I didn't play Legion either until the very last few weeks of Legion, because everyone was saying, "Oh, WoW's good again. Legion's really good," And I'd heard all the things about Warlords Adrenal being bad, and I was thinking it's WoW's going downhill now and stuff like that. But but everyone was like, "Oh, Legion's good again. It's made WoW good again." So I came back for Legion, did my Warlock class campaign. I was like, "Wow, this is really really cool," and and the mythic system and all that kind of stuff. And but I didn't have a guild. And I got really into it again, and then the Warbringers YouTube videos for Battle for Azeroth started coming out, and I was like, man, these are really cool cinematics and stuff, and the whole like the Jaina Proudmoore song, Daughter of the Sea and stuff.
It blew up.
Yeah, learning it on guitar and stuff, and I got really into it again. I got that fixation back, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get into it, So I did, and I found a really great guild, and I played through most of Battle for Azeroth. I think Battle for Azeroth probably played because one thing about WoW was I always had PC problems, man. Like, I always had money problems, and PC would die, and it'd take me months to get replacement part and save up the money, and and I remember the most hardcore I ever played was in Ulduar, that patch, and I was raiding 7 days a week, and we were pushing server firsts and stuff like that. Wow. And that's the most hardcore I've ever raided, and we did server first Algalon, the server first Yogg plus Zero, the server first Firefighter, and it was the most hardcore I've ever played. And then I was loving it, and but then my graphics card died, so then I missed everything else up until when my guild had mostly cleared Ice Crown, And I finally got back in and just, came back in for Icecrown, and then, then there was Cataclysm, and I don't know. I sort of ebb and flow in based on whether my computers are working or not. But Battle for Azeroth, I finally had money, to make sure that I had a computer that would work. And funnily enough, Battle for Azeroth was probably the only expansion where I played every single tier, even though everyone was really mad at it and saying it wasn't great and stuff like that. And I'm just like, man, I'm just really happy that I got a PC that runs at 60 frames now and I can afford it, And but I loved it, I love like the characters, the Zhara and the old gods, and N'Zoth. I think painfully wasted N'Zoth, man. I hope he comes back, because that fight was just. I love old gods, man. Yogg Saron. I'm thinking about getting a Yogg Saron tattoo, man. I just love Yogg so much.
Oh.
And I don't know. I can't even remember what the original question was, but it's just like my WoW journey, right?
Yeah.
But then like this whole thing with Microsoft and Activision sort of turbocharged it. Like I was like, man, Microsoft's buying it for me. It's all for me. Thanks, Mike.
That was nice.
The merging of my two favorite worlds are coming together. They're buying it for me. Like I couldn't believe it.
Yes.
Man, I couldn't believe it when that was announced. I was like, I had no inkling that was coming. Like no one did. It was top secret, and because I knew about a day before they acquired Bethesda that was happening. I knew the time, and I was like, I got the information at like 4 a.m, and I was like, my God. And I phoned Rand like 4 a.m, like, you're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you right now. But I had no idea about Activision, none whatsoever. So I was just like, am I dreaming right now? This is a dream, right? It still hasn't sunk in, I think, in some ways. Because I just know what Microsoft's going to do to fix that company. I just know in my heart, right? But the WoW's just been crazy. Like it's just always been there through my whole life. I was a role player, man. I did a little role playing stuff.
Nice.
I was Argent Dawn EU, man. Staying up all night, writing these really long stories out with people. Because I originally went on role playing servers to troll people. Like when I was being a dick.
Oh, you're one of those.
Yeah, I was one of those. Like 19 years old, 20 years old. I'd be like, man, these guys are such nerds, believe in their game. And I joined into the RP like in a trolling mindset, and I was like, shit, this is actually kind of fun. Oh no. They get into role playing and stuff.
They got you. They got you.
They assimilated me, and
oh my god.
I had some of the most fun in WoW, just role playing stories that people have written, and I try really hard to be like our server's like main and like antagonist, and like it ended with my character being killed like a raid boss in Felwood and thrown off a cliff. It's just amazing. That cliff in Felwood, where at the end of the river. It falls into Darkshore. I got thrown off there.
Oh my god!
And my character died and got resurrected as a Forsaken, And since then I've been undead. Since then I was an undead warlock for years because of RP.
That's fantastic. Hey, listen, that's as good a reason as any. I've had, as people who listen to this show know, I've had one main for whatever 15 years or whatever. My human warrior. And that's all I've ever played. I've got a bunch of alts that languish, but that's something that I've always had too. Is sort of they talk about with, if you're gonna play a character in a story, you only have like that one part of their life when you're dealing with the script, and so coming up with backstories and ideas and motivations and stuff. I always had that kind of in the back of my mind about. What is Berzerker's history? Like you come out, you're this warrior, you're questing, you're doing a thing. Like where are you from? Why are you doing this? Like I think that's fun. And anybody that has, because all of this comes from D&D, right? That's the home base for us is RPGs and theater of the mind stuff, right? And it's kind of a natural thing, I think, for all of us at some point to think about. It's varying degrees. I think, some people are like, maybe a little bit. And some people have long drawn out, you got the whole add-on and the thing. You got all the different things that tell you about your character. But I think it's very natural. And it's fun. It's just fun. It's supposed to be, right?
It is, yeah. I actually think that's one thing where Warcraft fell off a bit is the whole role-playing aspect of it. Making sure that...
How so?
Well, it's like making sure that and I realized this playing Elden Ring, but making sure that every like gameplay mechanic has a purpose, and every creature and every entity has a purpose, and it sort of it costs a lot of money to do that, right? Sure, like you need art assets and you need like all this kind of stuff, but I just felt this sort of twinge of pain when, like in Ouroboros, when you angle the camera upwards and you can see that the guards are just humans wearing some armor. These are ancient mystical guys that they're just humans, really. The model it's a human model, and like I was going through like Shadowlands trying to find a single model that was unique, like a animation, a skeleton rig, and it's none of them are. Like there's not a single new mob in the whole game, in the whole expansion that I could find. It was all just reused assets, and like reused assets are a reality of gaming, but it's gotten to a point where it's ridiculous now, and I feel like I'm just sort of, I don't know. It feels like all the mobs are wearing costumes. I don't feel like it takes you out of the immersion, and I think like I'm hoping Dragonlight, like the pool of immersion being broken, but I just sort of hope that WoW gets away from like some of its weekly routines. Because I remember back in the day, like you could just jump on and play whenever, and now it's like, oh, I've got to do this for the reset. I've got to do this many dungeons. I've got to make sure I get 4 dungeons done this day for my mythic chest, and sort of work around the schedule, and that takes you out of the immersion too. And I've written about this, that sort of the psychology of creating routines within your games starts to make it feel like a job. What other aspect of life is where like you do the same thing over and over again and then you get a paycheck at a certain time of the week? It's a job, So
right, once a week.
I missed the time when you got loot from killing a boss. You might have heard a police siren there. Sorry about that. I live on a main road, so yeah.
Adds to the effect of the show.
But yeah, I missed the experience of killing a boss and getting loot from the boss. And in fact, I remember one specific time when I took a break in Battle for Azeroth. No, actually it was Shadowlands. I took a break in Shadowlands because
I was gonna say you took a break in the first tier from Shadowlands,
so
right?
I cleared Castle Nathria, and it was like I was struggling to keep on my guild because work was really busy, and they were grinding like Mythic Plus and getting all the best loot, better than I could get from the raid. And I was thinking like I'd killed like 40 bosses without getting a single upgrade, like from the chest, from a boss kill, and I was just like, man, this is just the bad luck made me take a break, but that I just miss like killing a boss and getting the loot from the boss. Is that so crazy? Why does everything come out of chest arbitrarily? And not only that, speaking of immersion, like there's so few unique models. Like I'll get a sword or something called the super duper sword of death or something, and it's just like another one of them random boring gold models from Bastion, Like there's no unique models anymore. There's no tier sets anymore. This is the first tier that actually had tier sets, and they look terrible in my opinion. It just feels like everything feels like cut corners and cookie cutter and bland, and I know it's from lack of investment, and I know it's from not having enough artists, and I know it's from the pandemic too, probably to some degree, creating this ripple where in development. And I hope that like it's because a lot of their artists are working on making Dragonflight more at that level, but these are the kind of things I talk about when I say like the game has an immersion problem right now from a role-playing perspective, in my view. Yeah.
And you've talked and you've written about kind of your hopes for Dragonflight and where you hope that expansion is going to take the franchise and us as the players. So maybe for the edification of my listeners here, what else can you see from your life's experience of Warcraft, where it's been, and what you're hoping Dragonflight is going to change or bring or update that's going to bring back, let's say, I don't know if nostalgia is the right word, but to bring players back to a game that is more widely enjoyed?
Well, I think there's been a definitive philosophy shift at Blizzard, and I think part of it is inspired by Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn. I wrote a bunch of articles about Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn eating Warcraft's lunch. Like, that got like a monstrous amount of traffic, because like Final Fantasy XIV was blowing up and people like controversy and drama and, you know, us versus them.
Yes, they do.
So Final Fantasy XIV fans were reading it, Warcraft fans were reading it, you know, and it caused a bit of a stir, you know. And I played Final Fantasy XIV for a little while, but, you know, it's just, I just kept thinking, this ain't Warcraft. as good as it is, I was just sitting there thinking, man, it's just, combat feels like unresponsive, and, you know, it's just that World of Warcraft just has this sort of magic that sort of gets in, and I bet I've got, like, I said this somewhere else, I bet I've got a cluster of neurons somewhere in my brain that are dedicated specifically to Warcraft because of how much, like, I've been playing it, you know. And, you know, I played like, I tried playing a black mage because it was the closest thing to a warlock, and I'm just thinking that it's just slow, and, you know, even dumb things like turning around or turning the camera feels weird in Final Fantasy XIV, in my view. And, like, I just want it to be basically identical to WoW, and the only reason I realised the only reason I was playing 14 was because I wanted WoW to be better. I wanted to experience what I'd experienced from WoW, and I think, like, Blizzard's seen the sort of the growth of popularity of Final Fantasy XIV, because one thing Square Enix has done really, really well, and that dev team in Final Fantasy XIV, is upgrading core systems. And for the longest time in Warcraft, we've had this sort of borrowed power thing, and it's a philosophy that comes down from Activision again, and Call of Duty almost. Like, Call of Duty comes out every single year, and basically the whole game is borrowed power. The whole game of Call of Duty is borrowed power. When you think about it, you unlock all the weapons again. You do all this stuff, and then you get the new maps and stuff like that. And the next year, the next Call of Duty comes out. You lose all the weapons. You lose all the maps. You got to start over again, and it's like a ritual. You know, nothing really changes. You know, which is why I dropped off Call of Duty so hard. Is because you know, it's sort of that philosophy. It's an excuse to sell you the same stuff again. And that's filtered down into Warcraft. So, like, Legion was great because it was sort of like original, and the class hall system was so in depth, and there was so much you could do. Like, every single class hall, and it extended to the role playing experience. You know, the immersion. I'm immersed in my class, and Blizzard was like talked about class fantasy again, and I was like, man, they get it again. But then we came to Battle for Azeroth, and it was like, okay, we've got the same system again, borrowed power, but now everyone gets the same necklace, one necklace, and it doesn't have a model either, and it doesn't really do anything, you know. But it's the same, but worse. And then we got that again with Covenant system, which is the same, but even worse, borrowed power, even worse than the thing that was worse than the thing that they copied it from. And you know, it's like, man, what the hell are they doing? So they've clearly looked in Final Fantasy XIV, which does have this sort of iterative mindset where it's like they've got the Golden Saucer, and every expansion Golden Saucer gets new features, and the housing system gets new features and new things to unlock, and the profession system is really in depth and makes World of Warcraft's profession system look like a total joke. And all these systems in WoW which have sort of languished and become neglected and forgotten, like even the PvP system in WoW is like, what the hell are they doing with that? And like, Final Fantasy XIV's innovating in the PvP system in a way that even Warcraft isn't innovating in. Like, the biggest innovation in PvP system is like that solo shuffle thing, which was just an experiment. People are so desperate for something new that is like, Blizzard's like, oh yeah, finally, you know, here's some new content, and it was just an experiment. Like, there's no heavy investment in any of these features. And it seems like with Dragonflight, they're shifting back to a more sort of old school mentality where this is a game that's going to exist in perpetuity. So make the core of it good, because they've gotten so far away from the core of what WoW is that basically the games just exist in these expansion states now. And what is Warcraft, Azeroth, Kalimdor, and Eastern Kingdoms is basically sort of like a vestigial limb that's forgotten. Like all these features like professions and these like battlegrounds like Alterac Valley and Warsong Gulch and stuff like that. Like they did like some graphics upgrades on some of this stuff, but it's like the timelines are so convoluted across the expansions and if you are a new if I'm trying with all my influencer power to get a friend to play WoW, it's almost impossible because Exile's Reach is lame. It's lame, and then you kick them into Battle for Azeroth without any sort of full understanding of the wider context of the game. And it's just sort of like you walk into Battle for Azeroth out of Exile's Reach and you're already a champion superhero of the Horde, you know. It doesn't make any sense. You don't get that sense of progression, immersion, that Dungeons and Dragons style, like, oh, I'm a level 1 soldier and now I'm a level 99 gangster, like those Grand Theft Auto mobile ads, you know. Yeah. But you don't get that experience in WoW anymore because they've forgotten what the core of the game is. And I'm just hoping that, like, I'm not expecting them to revamp Azeroth anytime soon, but like people have been asking them for years to just update Silvermoon, you know, and integrate it with the world and stuff like that. It's because Warcraft fans, for them, Azeroth is Warcraft. It's Kalimdor, it's Orgrimmar, it's Stormwind, it's Eastern Kingdoms, and we just never really get to experience that anymore because it's so outdated content. It's so outdated and it's so old. But when you play Final Fantasy 14, you have to do the whole story from level 1. And, you know, it's a bit of a grind, but that content is like, it's evergreen, you know. It doesn't become outdated ever. Like, you can skip all of the side quests and just go straight through the main quest, and it's a linear story that tells you gives you the full context of the world. And I've argued they need to do that for Azeroth, you know, and sort of create a low stakes storyline with sort of enemies that maybe aren't major lore villains. Like, I don't want to fight the Lich King when I'm fighting in 1000 Needles or something. Just give me just give me like a centaur, a random centaur warlord, and, you know, kill him and forget about it. But it'll give me that sense of like I'm a level 1 soldier and I'm growing and I'm fighting for the Horde and stuff like that. And then when you get to the expansion, you've earned that sense of being a champion. Because Exile's Reach just ain't it. It ain't it, you know. And I'm just hoping that, like, we've seen them revamp professions, we've seen them revamp talent systems and sort of try and upgrade the core of what WoW is. It makes me think, like, hopefully they're gonna stop thinking about we need to make WoW, and a lot of maybe core WoW fans don't want to hear this, but the game won't grow unless they try to get new gamers, because a lot of people our age,
1000%, absolutely,
we ain't got time to play anymore as much, and, you know, people have got jobs and kids and stuff like that. You need new blood, you know. And if you're a new player of WoW, the experience is horrible. It's absolutely terrible, you know. And whereas you compare it to Final Fantasy 14, and it's not. Like, Final Fantasy 14 eases you into the game. It gives you, like, you get, like, NPCs that'll run dungeons with you and give you a better experience than, like, the jaded WoW veteran who just wants to rush through the dungeon as fast as possible, where like, you know, you're like a level 1, a level 12 dude in Dead Mines or you know, I can't even remember the name, that cave underneath Orgrimmar or whatever, Ragefire. And, like, there's a dude just rushing through the dungeon, killing everything, and you're just trying to learn mechanics. It's a horrible experience. And that's why WoW isn't growing, and that's why it's dying, is because more people are leaving than Blizzard's paying attention to bring in. And I just hope this pivot, although it's not going to be in Dragonflight, because obviously that's an expansion for us as core WoW fans, you know. But I'm hoping that this philosophy of let's improve the core of what WoW is will eventually translate to better systems for new players and a better experience for new players, which hopefully will make WoW grow again. And
Yeah.
if you're Microsoft and you've spent $72 billion, Warcraft is one of your cash cows, right? So you need to bring in those players. And I would hope that Microsoft's expertise with, Minecraft and stuff like that. I've just realized they're going to have Warcraft, Minecraft, and StarCraft. The three crafts. But you'd think that Microsoft would be thinking, like, we need to get this new players, We can't just milk the same 2 million jaded Warcraft veterans forever, because a lot of them are quitting and getting fed up and tired of it. They need to look at the core of what the game is and up-level it, and I think they will. I think Dragonflight's the first hint of that.
I hope so. I think like yourself, I've talked about this in the past, is they have to find a way to make the tent bigger or do something to bring in new blood, because it is a challenge. It's like drinking out of a fire hose right now, trying to take on the story. It's a lot, and it's hard to know where to go. Kind of, there's Chromie time, and then you have to like do it the shortened way before you can do it the full way. That can be confusing. I will say though, in defense of Exile's Reach, for a child like mine, it was a great experience. So I think that might be part of the difference, is also the age at which they are looking to bring people in, and like kind of who that target audience is. But like yourself, I'm very hopeful for Dragonflight, hopeful for Microsoft to come in and be a better steward and maybe get us back to a base level that is appropriate for the things that we know and love and want them to be. I want to be respectful of your time, but there was one more thing that I have to talk to you about before we get out of here. You wrote on Windows Central a review, and actually a couple of them, because there was, I think, an initial review and then a follow-up on Cyberpunk 2077.
Yes.
And I just want to say how much I appreciate another person out there who loved the game as much as I did, because it's one of my all-time favorite games. Because to tell you a quick history here is, in the 90s, as a teenager, I played the pen and paper RPG Cyberpunk 2020 with my friends. And so to be in that world all those years ago, and then to see Night City, which, by the way, for those of you that remember, I'm in Northern California. I live in Northern California. Where Night City is supposed to be is like an hour and a half, 2 hours from my house. It's Morro Bay. So to like have all of that in a world that feels like, in a weird way, accessible to me, but then to see it in its full, rich, live, beautiful glory. I know that it gets shit on and people ride that wave of, oh, it's trash or whatever, but I say it time and again. If you have a rig that can run it right, which I do, I have nothing else to compare it to. It is fucking mind-blowing to just drive around Night City. It is unreal.
I loved it at launch. Right at launch, yeah. I loved it right at the gate. And people were DMing me saying, like, you're a paid shell and all this stuff. I was so confused, man. I was so confused.
Me too.
I didn't get why people were so annoyed about it.
Yeah.
And then I sort of tried to look into why people were annoyed about it, and I sort of watched some of these YouTube videos. Like there was some YouTubers who were using my review, like, because I said it was like, it'll go down in history as one of the best games ever made in my review. Mm-hmm. And obviously there was this massive backlash, and YouTube reviewers were like taking my review out of context and being like, oh, look at these paid shills saying it's really good and stuff. But like, I went and looked at why my opinion was so far out differently to what other people did, and I realized why it was, to some degree at least. One of the things that I used to do, which I don't do anymore, but one of the things I used to do, I would purposefully ignore all the game's marketing if I knew I was reviewing it, because I didn't want the marketing to affect my opinion.
Okay.
And I was thinking, like, if I ignore all the marketing, I can give a more honest view. And I still think that's true, because without the marketing, that is my honest view of Cyberpunk 2077. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. However, when you actually watch some of their marketing, there's a lot of implications there that didn't actually emerge in the full game.
True.
I feel like in some of the marketing, they were heavily implying it was basically Grand Theft Auto on steroids.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were expecting that, because in some of these YouTube videos, they're talking about like, oh, the cars have no AI, they just drive around on tracks and stuff. But I was like, I mean, that's what the horses do in The Witcher too, you know. I was not expecting Grand Theft Auto.
No.
I was expecting The Witcher with guns. That's what I was expecting, you know, because
there you go.
the world of The Witcher is not interactive. It's not a sandbox. It's not Grand Theft Auto. It's a pretty background, you know. It's an open world, but it's not a sandbox. You can't destroy the trees, and you can't like smash up the environment, and you know, you can't do stunts on your horse unless like Roach glitches out and lands on a roof or something. You know, it's not a sandbox in the same way. It's like an action RPG, and that's what I was expecting with Cyberpunk. I was expecting Deus Ex, you know, Human Revolution with a bigger budget, and that's what I got, and I was bloody happy with it, you know.
Yes.
And and I didn't get any of the bugs because I had a PC that could run it flawlessly.
I didn't either.
Yeah, and although I will say I should have been more suspicious of the fact they wouldn't give us Xbox code for it. But that's because like I trusted CD Projekt Red because they had so much goodwill, and I was like, oh, that's weird, they won't give us code. That's usually something EA does. But I was like, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and trust that the Xbox version is fine. But yeah, that's Cyberpunk, man. I'm just waiting for like the story expansion that's supposed to be coming out next year now to give it another run through.
Yeah, I saw the big leak this past week. I try to stay away from all that stuff, and my friends and family know I am spoiler averse as much as possible. It's almost impossible in this day and age to do that, but I try as much as possible to stay away from those things. But I, you know, again, as somebody who came in knowing the universe, right, knowing the world, that was my big thing, is to be able to see the realization of Night City, of the Badlands, of the areas, you know, surrounding it, and to see that, not just to see it in whatever, but to see it in such a gorgeous way. Because you know, and I see people make jokes about this. Sometimes it's just the game is just photo mode, just all the time, because you're taking so many pictures of so many different things. But that is, for me, one of the biggest aspects, is to be able to play it live. But I enjoyed the campaign, the side quests. I mean, I'm on right now my third full clear right now of everything, and I'm having as much fun this time as I have the first, and I hope that people are able to give it a shot as time goes on, and you know, it goes on sale or whatever, fucking grab that thing, because I have no other experience like it, and I can't wait for whatever's coming. I hope it's not just a one and done expansion. I understand that it could end up being that way. I think that would suck, but I feel like at the point in my life where I'm at, I'm just grateful for the things that I've got, and that I got to do it at all. Because the fact that somebody took this franchise on and built what they built is like, I feel like it's made for me. Like, you can't see this here. I have the OG Tron poster right here, and I have a Cyberpunk poster right here. You know, it's like that has been my life, right? That is, I was born around the time that Tron came out, and like Cyberpunk is like the fully realized version of that kind of world that's always lived in my head. So when I talk about Warcraft, I always say Warcraft is one of my biggest loves, but like the Cyberpunk genre, like that whole thing, like it really is like deep to my core. So I really appreciated your reviews.
Thank you very much. You're one of the few people that did. I loved it, and I stand by that review. You know, people ask me like, "Are you going to retract that review?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I loved it, and I still love it, and I stand by it." Yes. I bought the collector's edition. You know,
so did I.
You
can't see it, but I got the statue right back here.
Yeah, mine's over there next to my Shadowlands collector's edition.
Fantastic.
And, but I love that shit, man.
Well,
it's an amazing game.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see more soon, and we get to rip through Night City on some more quadros and have some more fun. So. All right. Well, I want to be, like I said, respectful of your time. So listen, I want to thank you for coming on and chatting with me about all this stuff. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on Unshackled Fury and jamming with me. For folks that don't know by now, where can they find you out there on the internets?
You can find me on Twitter at Jez Corden, JezCorden, windowscentral.com, and also on podcast services, Xbox 2 podcast. We mostly talk about Xbox, but we talk about Microsoft as a business more than Xbox games specifically. So, and also as an Easter egg, if you search LFG UBRS on YouTube, you can hear a very bad song I wrote for World of Warcraft of when I was about 18 years old, which was actually played at the first BlizzCon.
Yes.
And I wrote that song, and some people have nostalgia for that song because it was on the forums and it went mini viral in the days before YouTube. So if you want to see a terrible song about a shadow priest, it's on there.
That's fantastic. Thank you, man. I appreciate you dropping that and for dropping by here. And my thanks to all of you for listening to this show. And remember, you can always follow me and this show on Twitter at Berzerker Rage and Unshackled_Fury. And you can also join our Discord, links for which are in the profile of the show on Twitter and on our Warcraft Radio page. Feel free to contact the show with your questions, comments, or otherwise through any of those resources or on shackledfury.com. And you can find this show wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for listening. Remember to keep your swords wet and your banners high. And we'll see you next time. Farewell.